Are you struggling to manage multiple data sources from various platforms and vendors? Are you tired of error-prone data flow setup and manual processing of data? If so, you need to check out the AEP Data Sources Data Landing Zone feature. Welcome to Analytics, and welcome to a new series called Visually Explained. So the Visually Explained series is where we break down complex Adobe MarTech concepts into easy to understand visuals. Now, in this episode, we're going to take a look at the AEP Data Sources Data Landing Zone feature and how it can make your data management a little less complex. All right, let's dive in. If you go to the documentation, the introduction for data landing zone clearly says that a DLZ is an Azure Blob storage interface which is provisioned by AEP to bring files into platform. Now that all makes sense in context of Adobe Experience Platform, right? And especially the data source connector. Now let's take a step back and understand what data landing zone concept in data engineering means in general. So a data landing zone is an isolated environment specially designed for data ingestion and preparation. It is the initial landing and staging area for raw data before it's processed, transformed and loaded into the destination platform, which is in our case the Adobe Experience Platform. Right, so now let's look into setup, license and limit. What do you need? How do you set this up? And what are the limits? So the first thing to understand is with all the customers of Adobe Experience Platform and other application services within the license are provisioned with one data landing zone container per sandbox. So if you have 5 sandbox as a part of your license, you get one DLZ container for each of the sandbox. And the total data volume across all containers is limited to the total data provided with your platform license. Platform also enforces a 7-day expiration for all the files within the DLC. Now, all these files will be deleted. That's the time to live for your files. So either you have to manually remove them, or the container will automatically remove these files after 7 days. Okay, now let's take a look at security and access. And once all of this is set up, how do you start using it, right? So the DLZ is like any other Azure service, supports SaaS-based authentication, and it's protected with the out-of-box Azure Blob storage security mechanism. And the best part is there's no network changes required for you to access the data landing zone. That is, you don't have to have an allow list or cross-region setup. So this can be accessed across different geos without any configuration required by organization. And of course, there are a couple of ways to access DLZ. One is using terminal, or using the Azure Storage Explorer interface to upload and maintain files within the DLZ. Right, so now that we understand what data landing zone is in context of Experience Platform and its setup and license and limitation, let's see how it's all wired up and the output of all this feature. Right, so first things first, we've already understood what data landing zone is and how it's provisioned. So to get started, the first thing you'll have to do is obviously go into Adobe Data Sources within the Experience Platform, and you'll obviously have to go to a specific environment and then get the credentials for the Azure Data Explorer, the Azure Storage Explorer. Now, you'll end up using these credentials to log in into the Azure storage, either via terminal or via the Storage Explorer. So in our case, let's assume we're using the Storage Explorer UI, and you log in and upload a file within the Storage Explorer. Now, once this upload is complete, you head back into Adobe Experience Platform, where you go back to the data sources, to the same environment, and continue the setup. So now, since you've already used the credentials, uploaded the files, now you should be able to see this file within the data landing zone source connector. And after this, it's pretty much similar setup process which you follow with other source connector, where you select the data. Of course, either you create a data set or select an existing data set, followed by mapping the data and scheduling the data flow, right? So this bit completes the configuration and setup. Right, so now that the setup and configuration is complete by data landing zone, let's also understand what happens next. So just like any other data sources or any other source of data coming in via the connector or manual upload, in some cases, the data flows into a data set. Now, this data set, if enabled for profile, then the data which you uploaded becomes part of the profile, the real-time profile, obviously, which is then used in various applications, either create segments or obviously create segments and share that across for data activation, either into your marketing automation software or back into your CRM or a marketing vendor or even your loyalty platforms. So these are just a few examples, but pretty much it can be activated across all your connections or destinations within Experience Platform. Now, there's also a case where the dataset may not be enabled for profile and may be purely used for reporting purposes. In that case, of course, you have access to the query service to query the raw data or use the Adobe Customer Journey Analytics to create reports based on the data which was ingested. Right, so that was the setup and the outcome or the application of an end-to-end use of data ingested via the data landing zone. Right, now let's take a look at some of the use cases. Rather, when is the right time, or when would you consider using a data landing zone? Now, if you see the out-of-box connectors available in the Experience Platform data sources, there's quite a few categories, and there are a couple of times where you might end up using DLZ. That is, if there is no out-of-box extension, or a good example is if you're an external vendor who has access to your data, like a survey system or a call center data, and you can have them use the data landing zone and upload the data on a regular basis to make sure that this data is ingested. And of course, there are use cases where there are some data sets which has to be frequently updated. A good example is lookup data sets, product metadata data sets, and also if you have an in-house data science team or teams which build recommendations for customers or next best offers for customers, these has to be uploaded on a regular basis. So data landing zone is a good option for business as usual data sets, which needs to be updated quite often if obviously there's no native connector available within Adobe Experience Platform. So yes, those are a few things which I could think of. Right, so let's talk about the benefits of a data landing zone. Now, data landing zone can become a central repository for where all the data to be ingested can be stored before being processed by platform. But especially when there's no connector available, a native connector is available within the Experience Platform, and works great if you have multiple vendors having some interaction data about your customer, like we spoke about survey, call center, or you have a external agency doing some kind of analysis, doing some kind of machine learning or AI on your data, and they have a place to upload this data, which can then be immediately activated within CDP, within AEP. Now, obviously, a few more things which comes out of this is the increased efficiency in uploading the data, and of course, which leads to faster value to data, right? And it's easy to set up either for ad hoc or even bulk data management. And if you have Azure set up within your organization, it integrates easily with other Azure services as well. And of course, the good part is it's part of the Adobe license, and there's no extra infrastructure cost or setup cost. So so those were the benefits of the data landing zone. All right, so there you have it. The first visually explained guide about AEP Data Sources data landing zone. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to comment and let me know if you want me to cover any other feature in this series. Thank you.